Picture this. You're helping a friend move. You're staring down this massive, heavy wooden crate on a concrete floor. You push. Nothing. You dig your heels in. You push harder, straining your legs and your back. Still absolutely nothing. And then, finally, with one huge shove, it slips. It starts sliding. And suddenly, it gets easier, right? So why is it significantly harder to push a heavy crate from a dead stop than it is to just keep it moving once it finally gets going?
Ask yourself, why is starting so much harder than keeping it going? Well, the answer isn't that you magically got stronger in that split second. The answer actually lies in the hidden mechanics of physics.
By the end of this lecture, you're going to totally understand the concept of friction, the mathematical formulas behind it, and exactly how to apply them to real-world examples. Here's our agenda. 1. The core concept. 2. Static versus kinetic. 3. The formulas. 4. Real-world coefficients. 5. The submicroscopic view. And 6. Summary. We're going to break this down step by step, moving from the macro world of crates and cars all the way down to the microscopic world of vibrating atoms.
Okay, let's jump straight into section 1, the core concept.
Friction is officially defined as a force that opposes relative motion between systems in contact. The absolute key word there is opposes. Friction is always parallel to the contact surface. So if you push a crate to the right, friction pushes left. It works in the exact opposite direction of the motion, or even the attempted motion. It's basically the invisible resistance you feel every single time you interact with the physical world.
Let's move to section 2, static versus kinetic, and see how this actually solves our stubborn wooden crate mystery.
So we actually have two completely distinct types of friction at play here. First up is static friction. This acts between stationary objects, and it's a fully responsive force. If you push that crate with 50 newtons of force, static friction pushes back with 50. If you push with 100, it matches you with 100. It grows stronger and stronger until you finally hit its breaking point. But once the crate actually slips, kinetic friction takes over. Kinetic friction acts between moving objects, and crucially, it has a much lower magnitude. That is exactly why it's easier to keep the crate sliding than it was to get it started in the first place.
Now let's test this with a real-life analogy. Think about driving. Why does a car violently jerk when you come to a full stop if you don't let up slightly on the brake pedal? Got an idea? Well, it's because as the wheels finally stop slipping against the brake pads, you instantly transition from that lower kinetic friction back into the iron grip of the much higher static friction. That sudden spike in frictional force grabs the wheel and boom, it causes that jerky stop.
All right, now that we've got the basic concept down, let's look at section 3, the formulas.
Just like working through a problem on a whiteboard, we've got 3 simple steps. Step 1, identify the normal force, represented by the capital letter N. This is the perpendicular force pushing the surfaces together. Think of the weight of our heavy crate pushing straight down into the floor. Step 2, find the coefficient of friction, which we represent with the Greek letter mu. This is a special, unitless number that depends entirely on the materials that are touching each other. And then, step 3, just apply your formula.
Now, the really crucial point here is comparing these two equations side by side. For static friction, its F sub s is less than or equal to mu sub s times the normal force. Did you catch that less than or equal to sign? That's the math basically proving what we just talked about, that static friction is a responsive force. It scales up to a maximum limit. But for kinetic friction, it's just F sub k equals mu sub k times the normal force. Once you're actually sliding, the math behaves simply. It's just a constant.
Let's connect these variables to the real world in section 4, real-world coefficients.
It's amazing how different materials completely alter this coefficient. Rubber on dry concrete has a massive static coefficient of 1.0, and you definitely want that grip for your car tires, right? Ice, on the other hand, drops way down to 0.1. But get this, look at bone lubricated by synovial fluid in your own knee joints. Static is 0.016 and kinetic is 0.015. I mean, evolution has literally engineered our bodies to be dramatically more frictionless and efficient than even ice sliding on ice. That's wild. Let's ground this with a quick example, 0.082. What exactly is this? Well, this is the calculated coefficient of kinetic friction for a 62-kilogram skier sliding down a 25-degree snowy slope, experiencing 45 newtons of friction. If you take the kinetic friction force and you divide it by the normal force, which here is just the portion of the skier's weight pushing perpendicularly into the slope, you get 0.082. It's simply a ratio that perfectly describes the sliding interaction between those skis and that specific snow.
Okay, we know the math now, we know the forces, but wait, this is important. You might be asking, why does this happen at all? Like, what physically causes this grip between two surfaces in the first place?
To answer that, we really have to shrink down for Section 5, the submicroscopic view.
So we usually just assume that the total macroscopic surface area of an object is what causes friction. But actually, scratch that. It's more like even seemingly perfectly smooth surfaces are incredibly rough and jagged when you look at them at the microscopic level. It's like tiny mountain ranges. The actual contact area is just the microscopic high spots, the peaks, that actually manage to touch. When you apply a greater normal force, say by stacking a second heavy crate on top of the first one, you just mash more of these microscopic peaks together. This increases the actual contact area and, as a result, increases the friction.
Down at the atomic level, we can see exactly what's going down. Atoms link together to form lattices. When these rough surfaces rub against each other, the surface atoms actually adhere. They stick together. As the sliding motion forces them apart, these atomic lattices snap and vibrate. And this intense vibration creates sound waves that penetrate the material. As those sound waves eventually diminish, their kinetic energy gets converted into heat. That is exactly why quickly rubbing your hands together on a cold winter day warms them right up. But, as much as we know, we definitely don't know everything. As this quote highlights, the variation in shear stress at this tiny scale is massive, more than a factor of 10 to the 12th, and it's incredibly difficult to predict theoretically. While we totally understand the macroscopic basics, atomic scale friction remains incredibly complex. It's actually a major frontier in physics right now. Why? Because if we can engineer materials to truly minimize this atomic friction, we could save hundreds of billions of dollars globally in mechanical energy that is currently just being completely wasted as heat.
All right, before we finish up, let's wrap things together with Section 6, Summary.
First, remember that friction is simply the force that opposes relative motion. Second, static friction, the force keeping things completely still, is almost always greater than kinetic friction. That's exactly why starting is so much harder than keeping going. Third, our formulas rely on the normal force pushing surfaces together and those material coefficients, the mu. And finally, on a submicroscopic level, friction is the result of actual contact area, atomic adhesion, and lattice vibration, turning all that mechanical energy into heat. We've spent this entire explainer looking at how solid objects interact with other solid objects. But I want to leave you with one final kind of crazy thought. What happens when the surface you're moving through isn't solid at all? Like what happens when you're moving through a fluid like air or water? Does friction work the exact same way? Well, that changes the physics entirely, and it's exactly what we're going to explore in our next lecture on drag forces. Keep wondering, keep calculating, and I'll see you